sit in the hot seat and let us know what's on your mind. The purpose of the show is it was created to bring together single men and women who are either pursuing their doctoral degrees or may have completed the journey within the last couple of years or maybe a couple of years old and looking for a special soulmate, someone who can probably provide some type of good conversation or what have you. We do recognize that only a small fraction, maybe 1.68% of our U.S. population may earn a PhD or a terminal degree, and we understand it is an anomaly, and therefore the dating scene can be a bit of a challenge. But it's our intention to use this platform, this group, as an opportunity for singles to have open and respectful dialogue, conversations on almost any matter. If you haven't joined our PhD single group on Facebook, you definitely need to check it out, because we can go from extreme to extreme thinking, scholars or what have you. So you definitely want to check us out if you have not joined us. To our married folks, we welcome you all to this group. However, you cannot join the PhD singles group. So we do screen that process. That's that you respect those rules, if you will. We also look forward to planning social activities so that we can bring those individuals that are meeting in those groups in this Blab site to different mutual locations or what have you, and meet face to face and take off that thinking cap and kind of just let our guards down, if you will, and enjoy life, enjoy the simple things, and that's meeting other individuals. We want to make sure we definitely recognize those who have signed in to be with us. Where y'all from? Y'all let me know. Put in the comments, where you calling from, or where you, sitting at. Are you in your office? Are you calling from Houston, Texas? And the doc is from Houston, Texas. And I see someone, Chris. Chris, welcome aboard, Chris. Who else? I'm just trying to get it going.
You got Jason.
All right, Jason. Hello, Jason. Welcome aboard. We appreciate you.
And of course,
right. Now, folks, before we get started, we're going to have one simple rule that we'll allow each participant up to at least 3 minutes to have a seat in the chair and expound on whatever it is you want to expound on. And then we're going to open it up for someone else. So make sure that you are respectful of those times. And sometimes we can have someone who may be very, very much talkative and can go on and on, but we'll try to monitor that with our engineer who's going to help us do that. I see someone calling from Delaware, Miami. All right, Miami. And what is that, Northern Virginia? All right, thank y'all. Keep them coming. We love you, people. We love you. All right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to start into the segments, and it's going to kind of be like where I just sprout a reflection or maybe a question, and then I'll let you all roll with that response. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to kind of read a basic definition of the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that you are a fraud, that you somehow are less qualified than your peers, or less deserving of success, and you feel as though that someone's going to find out that you may have not worked harder or longer as everyone else. And so it really is a delusion. We want you to know that it's not a mental deficit. People need to be understanding of that just because you may have experienced or experiencing imposter syndrome, you are not dealing with a mental deficit. So, I know the journey can be a bit ludicrous and can be very arduous at points, but we just need to know that what you're dealing with is nothing out of the ordinary. So let's go ahead and open up that seat, and let's just kind of see where everybody's mind at when it comes to imposter syndrome. And we'll start there, and then I'll go ahead and open through some reflection, if you will. We got anybody want to join? Chris, anybody from Miami, y'all want to go ahead and take that hot seat?
So while y'all thinking about taking that hot seat. I know that many of the cohort that I interfaced with in my 4 years in my doctoral journey, part of the reason why they felt a bit of an imposter is most of them would say because they were attending an HBCU. And so there is some conversation that had been had about the value of a doctoral degree as compared to a traditional PWI, so to speak. And so they really felt inadequate sometimes, or, in competition when they were with those PWI counterparts. So I know that they felt that a lot on that level. And then, we would have some conversations about getting to the end, and initially it was really cohort based. It was supporting each other. It was helping each other with homework assignments and completing all of those tasks and doing a lot of teamwork, a lot of group assignments. And then as we were winding down to the end where your individual talent had to be displayed, there was a little bit of a fear and a little bit of that imposter syndrome stepping in, where for the first time they realize, oh my goodness, I'm about to do this. I'm about to be recognized as a leader in this particular topic or this particular area. And they were getting a little nervous. And so a lot of that was kind of something that they kind of put upon themselves as opposed to a real notion. But that happened a lot, at least in our cohort. Did anybody else have similar situations in their cohorts? We got some shy people again this week. That's all right.
Yeah, this is rather strange. They're quiet tonight. Last time we had a lot of people just ready to chime in. I don't know if they're trying to reflect maybe or trying to figure out how can they, chime in or what have you. But if they would just go ahead and ask to be, seated, we would definitely listen to what you have to say. I see somebody chimed in. They said, I have a degree from an HBCU in Ivy and finally at PWI. I have to say the foundation I got from the HBCU was a key foundational piece for me. The people I graduated with from my HBCU all had the same aspirations I did. That is Brother J001. All right. That's some interesting information to share with us. I wish he can come on. Yeah, somebody's calling in. We definitely want to hear. All right, let's go. Jason Calhoun. Can we get him in?
Is he calling? I don't think he's calling in. I think he asked a question. I don't see the call in.
One sec. He said he's about to call in. All right, we're going to give him a second. This is kind of interesting, Danielle. I didn't really say anything because my experience is a little bit different. My undergrad and grad degree is definitely from an HBCU. So I had that experience of nurture that one would definitely need. And my doctorate's degree was from a online university of Phoenix, which, by the way, is a great institution, regardless of what people think. I also teach there. I teach there as well, so I have the best of both worlds. And when I realized the rigor and the seriousness behind the education that is provided, although expensive, I really am appreciative to the learning experience that I acquired along that journey. So, shouts out to the UOP.
And I had the opposite experience because my undergrad and my graduate degree came from Penn State University, which was a PWI. And so coming into the HBCU to obtain my PhD, it was definitely a different journey, a different experience, definitely a culture shock. I know that many of my colleagues who I've graduated with, in the PWI, they didn't think that I would have a culture shock because here I am, a Black girl attending a Black school. What kind of culture shock could you possibly have? This is your people, but when you grow up in, a PWI, even through high school, and then you attend HBCU, it is a culture shock. It's a difference. It's a complete different way that they do business, the way they engage with their students. Is really a different experience. So I did have a bit of a culture shock. So we have Brother J001 calling in. So we're going to pull him in.
Okay, awesome.
Let's see. He's trying to get in here.
All right, I see him coming through.
What's up?
Hey, Jason, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. So what do you got to give us about this experience here, the imposter syndrome?
I mean, my biggest experience was. You can't hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. My biggest thing was coming from a suburban upbringing outside of Philadelphia. I knew the sort of experience I wanted to have going to school. I was comfortable going to an HBCU. I remember very clearly my senior year in high school going down to Atlanta and feeling at home. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you were at Prairie View. My parents went to Prairie View, and so
okay.
And so we talked a long time about experiences. My mom had gone to AU before it became Clark Atlanta, and so she had familiarity with some of the things that would be different, but also the value of the experience. Contrast that to my doctorate experience at a large white university.
Right.
At this point, because I didn't go straight through, a lot of folks go from undergrad straight through grad school. Right. Now I went to get my master's. It was actually in a PhD program for chemistry. And it became really clear I didn't want to be a bench chemist, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, switched what I wanted to do. But the people I went to school with as an undergrad were probably the most important reasons why I think I was successful in my doctorate program. Mm-hmm. We had a really small major, there wasn't a whole lot of chemistry majors. Right. And there were 17 of us. And 15 out of those 17, we all now have terminal degrees.
Wow.
And so I had those folks to be able to lean on. And I thought that was really, really important. We're, 2 or 3 of them are still some of my very best friends to this day. We're 20 years. And so I think that's really important, that you have somebody that can, align with what you're trying to do and your goals. There's a book, and I can't remember the name of it. It's about 3 MDs, black males, African American males that are all doctorates, mm-hmm. And about how they grew up together. And that really resonates with me, the fact that I had some people I could, email or call and say, yo, I'm struggling right now. How did you get through this? Right. And so I think that for me, that was really, really important. And I think folks going through, especially those that are working and going through that, which is what I was doing.
Right.
It's a lot. And I had, at the time when I started, my son was 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my ex, at the time, was finishing her PhD. And so we just had a whole lot of stuff going on. But if you're not communicating well, and if you're not sharing your struggles with people who care what you want to do, it's hard. It is emotional. It's draining.
That is definitely true. That is definitely true. And have you had those times where you kind of felt like you were dealing with the imposter syndrome yourself? Understanding that you needed your support system to kind of keep you focused and successfully get through the program. But were there any times where you feel like, I can't do this? Who told me to do this in the first place?
I think anybody in a PhD program probably feels that at some point. I know
Right.
My biggest, it wasn't so much, I couldn't do it. But when you're only black male, even certainly black females feel that. But I remember clearly the cohort that came into the education program that I was in. It was like 35, 40 people, and it was me and another black guy. And I remember, subconsciously we ended up looking at each other and talking afterwards. It was like, all right, you ready for this? Are you good? We're still friends to this day.
Right.
But it was, you got to have, whether it's a cohort within a cohort. For me, it was, trying to figure out what do folks do to get out of this.
Right.
And wow, I hadn't thought about that. In fact, it'll be 3 years tomorrow, actually.
Wow.
When I finished. The fact that I remember that is kind of odd too. But it is. It's a grind.
Right.
It's 5 years, 3 months to get out. So I don't know if is so much. I felt like an imposter, but it was certainly emotional. Late nights. I think the working full time, because I think it is very different for those that are able to go to school full time, and have I won't say that be their primary concern. Certainly families and everything else come into play, but working full time and then transitioning to class right after, going to work, then transitioning to home, having to deal with all that,
right,
and then being up 6 hours past that, and having to get through it. You got to have a good committee. I mean, there's so many things, so many parts that have to fall into the right place for you to finish. Because I think what I say, there's more all but dissertations than there are PhDs.
Right.
I think there's a reason why.
Right.
Because it is that support system.
Right. And many of us get to the beginning. I mean, they get to the coursework and they're thinking that the coursework is reflective of the entire experience.
Yeah.
And it's they learn, for some of us, very quickly that that's not the case. And for others, they never really learn it, even in their 10th year ABD. Yeah.
I've got some friends like that. And it's like, I don't want to say it's a badge of honor. They're like, oh, well, I'm AB, like, yo, finish. Like, what are you doing? Just to figure out what you got to do and get out. Don't solve the world's problems later. That was the best advice I ever heard. Like, don't try to solve everybody's problem. Solve your problem.
Right.
Get out. Then solve everybody else's problem. Stay in your lane. And,
right.
That was probably the best advice. One of my committee members said that to me. Because he asked me during my proposal defense, something like that. I'm like, yeah, that's a great question. It's not what I want to answer.
Right.
But let me finish, and then I'll come back and I'll answer that later.
That's right. That's right. So, Ray, I can see you.
Can you guys hear me?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, it's kind of going in and out. Since we had Jason on the line, I wanted to read an opening reflection, and maybe he can chime in since we already have him in that seat, if you don't mind. Here's what we have. We found that there are studies that demonstrate emotional and motivational issues are factors that may determine a doctoral student's retention and completion of the PhD program. Ultimately, failure or dropout can happen. Additional studies suggest that doctoral students expect emotional and professional support from their chairs or supervisors or committee members or whomever you may see in that role. It just doesn't matter. I mean, different people, you look for that emotional support, and additional research suggests that the imposter syndrome is a real term and that it has a great effect on women, mostly women. Susan Pinker's book entitled The Sexual Paradox, Troubled Boys, Gifted Girls, and the Real Difference Between the Sexes discussed that many highly accomplished women suffered from the feelings that they are imposters and that they do not belong where they are and they don't deserve the accolades that they receive, and the talent and hard work that was put forward is not real. It's a fraud, as opposed to men. Why do you think women will feel this way?
Wow.
I know you probably can't answer that.
Yeah. All my experience of being a woman. You know, you can only draw from what you've experienced coming into. Like you said, I was at George Mason here in Northern Virginia, and I was in education. And coming into our program, there were 30, like I said, I think it was 37 people total. Only one Black female at the time, and she hasn't finished yet. And you know, I reach out occasionally, sort of check on. It was one of those things where there, like I said, there was only 3 of us at the time. It was 2 males, 1 female, and you know, lots of things go on. There's so many things that are on this path that, you know, as you guys know, that interfere with life. You know, life is it is what it is, and you know, it's yeah, it was a struggle, and it's not the coursework itself. At least, you know, I'm speaking just anecdotally from what we've talked about. It wasn't the coursework, the rigor of the coursework that was an issue, but you know, there's, as you all know, they sort of use this pathway that you've got to kind of follow, the boxes you have to check, and if you get out of sequence, that just creates other issues. It's a domino effect of, okay, I don't have time to do this, or can I take classes during the summer? And again, if you're working full time, or if you've got other things going on, it's a challenge, man. And you know, I don't know, at least I can't say it's a male-female issue. You know, this PhDs, we're the 1%ers. I mean, it's hard. And certainly there are things that I think affect us differently than perhaps other folks because of support systems and because people don't understand why in the hell we're doing what we do. Like, who wants to go through this? You know, who wants to take 4 years or 3.5 years of coursework and then you essentially by yourself writing? You know, you've got a committee, but it's you. You know, it's you sitting right here where I'm sitting right now at 1 a.m. writing papers. Who wants to do that? You know?
Right.
You know,
and I got a lot of that. I got a lot of, you know, some of my colleagues, some of my friends, my family members who just kind of shook their head and, you know, why are you doing that? What is the point of that? You know, you've already gotten your associates and your bachelor's and your like, what other degree are you trying to achieve? Yeah. There's nothing else, you know, to achieve. And, you know, or they would say things like, I would have never done that. You know, I'll just ride on the backs of other PhDs. I don't need to be a PhD. Yeah. You know, I don't need to do that. I don't need to go into debt. And that could sometimes put you in an emotional cycle. Yeah. You know, like, wait a minute, maybe they're right. Maybe I shouldn't have put myself in $100,000, you know, worth of debt without a promise of this great job.
To come into education and be poor.
Right. You got to pay going in and you got to pay going out, you know? So it's an interesting experience. And I find that, you know, with the author, you know, talking about it being, Miss Susan Pinker, talking about it being such a thing that impacts women mostly, you know, it makes me think about that. It makes me think about my cohort and the gender makeup of our cohort and, you know, what that particular dynamic. But what I did find in our cohort of 32, many of which were women in the cohort, but all of the individuals who did not finish were the men. You know, so I find it interesting that this research is saying that, but I look at my own cohort and I see that. And then the women that finished first in line were all single mothers.
Oh, wow. You know, really I can't. Yeah, that's a very interesting phenomenon. I can't really say why do women feel, I guess, that they are most likely to be an imposter, because of course I'm not a woman. However, I can say that my profession, I work in criminal justice, and I always teach 2 fundamentals to my students. It's based on critical thinking and analytical skills. And I always do an exercise with them, checking their perception versus actuality. Our perceptions can be swayed by so many variables, so many different elements. Just in the case of my experience at a HBCU in undergraduate versus your experience at a PW Ivy League, you being a woman, I being a man, different generational differences. I mean, there's so many factors that can influence your perception and your thought processes. And we bring that into the journey. We bring that with us, and there's nothing you can do about that. That's a part of life. And the key to it is being able to balance what it is that we're actually experiencing versus what it is that we believe or perceive. And as men, we do tend to be a little more stronghold on our emotions. However, it could break a brother down. I've seen it. I mean, it was points when I was in the journey and I wrote this paper and I thought it was just an outstanding job. I had my citations, APA on point. I had my references, and I mean, I actually failed the paper. And I was distraught, man. I wanted to take that paper and throw it at the wall. I was like, what the hell you mean? So, you have to be able to balance that experience, and be able to understand what it is that's going on. On the other end, the chairs and supervisors should be very much cognitive of what is going on, conscious of what's going on, and understand that this is new for us. It is definitely a culture shock. And so he or she should be willing to understand that to the point that they can chime in at a point. When, at what point, I don't know. Because I don't want nobody to coddle me like I'm a child, but, give me some help. Let me know I'm not on this journey by myself.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think perception is reality for a lot of folks. If they don't feel like they've got support, and they're going into this program by themselves, regardless of what's available through their programs or not, that's their reality. If they're not comfortable, utilizing the system to work in their favor, I mean, that's their reality. Who am I to say you need to do X, Y, and Z? Well, if that's not what works for them, then, I definitely, I've had friends that we've talked about this and the perception of what it means to be an African-American male or female with a PhD. I've talked about folks who are thinking about it. And I'm telling you, go for it. I go, but be prepared for X, Y, and Z. I go, it's lonely as hell. I go, you're gonna have nights where you're by yourself and you're figuring out, why am I writing this? Really, you're becoming the world's greatest expert on something nobody else cares about. And it's a struggle sometimes. And you try to explain it to. I'm fortunate my parents were educators, so it wasn't something I had to explain to them why I was doing it. But certainly, you get that, I'm never going to do that. Why not? Why wouldn't you do it? We're all about education. Why wouldn't you want to pursue something like that, to be able to share with someone else? It's but that perception, is definitely reality for some coming into programs, like you said, where you have this cohort and you see these different groups of folks succeeding, and it's very interesting. As to why, like for my cohort, the white women were all very successful. They all sort of did their thing and they got in and out. I had one who was in my specific cohort, sort of my concentration. She was done in 4.5 years, but she was also able to take courses at a pace that the rest of us who were working full-time weren't. So it's. I think you spoke, Ray, about your committee. I think that's just so important. Having that committee that sees your vision. Having a chair that understands your reality. My chair was an older white guy, but he was as cool as could be. Because he understood the things where I told him where I came from, and I told him the struggles and the journey that took me to where I was at that point when I started. And he got it. You know, he was very vested in me succeeding. And if you don't have that as part of your emotional sort of support system, it's a struggle. You know?
How do you think that translate into any career? You know, when individuals are struggling or, you know, going through emotions, be it a male or a female, in this doctoral experience, how do you think that translates into what happens early on in their careers past the doctoral journey?
I think it's sort of, I guess, two ways to look at that. For me, I was in my career, but I had the job that I said I wanted to have once I had the PhD. I was fortunate it came open before I finished. And so I was able to apply. And yes, I was able to leverage that as part of my application piece. Like, okay, I'm studying to do this. I'm almost through the program. This is what I'm bringing to the table. Now, if you're going like a lot of folks, because I'm in public K-12 education. So now I adjunct on the side, but that's my choice when I do that. Mm-hmm. But if you were in a situation where I said, okay, I'm wrapping up this doc in education and I want to go do something else, that's a little different. I think that's a different conversation. For me, it's different because it creates, you know, you're starting in at the ground floor usually, you know, as an assistant or an associate. You know, if education's where you're going, and that's very. I didn't want to hustle for grants. You know, that's not my thing. I've always been a K-12 guy who wants to impact. Like I have an 8-year-old. You know, those are the kids that I want to see. Hey, here's a guy doing something that's kind of cool. You know, he can do these sorts of things, and those are the kids I want to go talk to. Go ahead.
You know, You know, Jason, I actually went through 3 chairs or mentors. I actually went through 3 chairs, and it wasn't until I found the 4th chair who actually mentored me coming into the field with University of Phoenix as an instructor. And that's when things really took off for me. I could not relate to my chair. My first 3 chairs, they were non-responsive. At points, I felt as though they did not know what they were talking about. I feel like I was given misguided information. And at some points, I felt like I was just a number and a check, you know, just something for them to make a few dollars off. And, you know, that part of the journey was kind of stressful because here I am as an independent scholar. Keep in mind, my cohort in Phoenix, it's a little bit different. For the most part, I kept maybe around 13 of them with me throughout the course. But at points, you will be in a course with another cohort or what have you. And it's just kind of difficult to explain. But I was probably one of the youngest ones in the group. It was diverse. It was African Americans, Caucasians, Hispanic, just very diverse. But when it came to my supervisor, I could not relate, man, and it was very, very much so. It was detrimental to my success, and so I had to.
Did you interview multiple people?
I went through 3 interviews with people, and I went through the process, and it was just a fraud. They were the frauds, and so when you actually had to go through whatever you need to go through to get to the next milestone or what have you, they were not cutting it. And it wasn't anything that I was doing wrong. It's just that they wasn't cutting the mustard. And so when I found my the one that helped me get through the final piece, you know, it was a learning experience for me. And I had to realize that internally is where it's at. You know, yes, you need external support. You need those factors to help you cheer on or whatever these may be. But internally, you have to have that will that is going to help you drive forward and learn and appreciate the steps of becoming an independent scholar. yes, it's easy to read that information and to acquire knowledge and retain that knowledge, but to be able to apply that to that dissertation is where the masterpiece of the craft needs perfecting. And so, when I realized that, and the only thing that this guy did, my mentor did, was spoke to me, told me you can do it, gave me a few words of encouragement, and man, I took off like it wasn't nothing. That was just amazing, so I can definitely empathize with you all on, what you all are speaking of or what have you. But we definitely want to keep the ball rolling, and we want to hear from other people as well. I know somebody said they're just here to lurk, and we appreciate you lurking. But we definitely want everybody to chime in. I mean, this is for us, people who have experienced the imposter syndrome, or someone who have maybe experiencing it now, feeling as if what they achieve is not real, but it's very much so real. And you probably put forth the effort and the time and patience and dedication into that work of art that can take us to the next level, that can create a paradigm shift, if you will, in your respective fields or what have you. So we definitely need to hear from other people. Are you all out there? Because we enjoying Jason now. We wearing him out.
Nah, it's all good.
Galen is actually calling in right now. Mr. Galen Bingham is calling in, so I'm going to pull him in now. What he has to offer.
Hey, guys, how you guys doing?
No worries.
How are you doing?
Well. Hey, first of all, I just wanted to commend you guys for, the little bit that I could catch from what I've heard so far. You guys are either on the path to your PhD or you've already acquired your PhD. Dude, that's just amazing. That's amazing work. I don't have a PhD, but I've got relatives who do, and I've done enough postgraduate work to understand how significant that is. So, one of the things that I focus on, I'm an author, and I really specialize in helping leaders achieve the kind of success that deliver amazing results and the kind of inspiration that remains even beyond their physical existence. So one of the things I wanted to encourage you guys with is just know that God has created all of us to be the greatest in the world at something. And therefore, our life's journey then is about finding that thing so that we can get on with being the greatest in the world. And I can think of no other significant step than getting a PhD. It's going to be amazing, but it's going to require that you have a very clear focus on what you're getting it for and who you're trying to become. It's great if you know who you are, but it's more important that you know who you're trying to become. And you guys seem to have that already. So just great work. And I just wanted to get on to encourage you.
Oh, well, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
And we'll share the message with the rest of the members of the PhD singles group. And many of us, like you said, have either pursuing this doctoral journey and have, as I had just recently completed the journey in December. And so I think as you mentioned, when I first came in, I wasn't quite sure why I was coming in. I knew that this was something that I wanted to do, and I had not really honed down exactly what it was that I wanted to achieve once I got, finished it. And so without knowing that, it would have made my journey so much more difficult. And the moment I realized what it really was that I was trying to accomplish long-term as well as short-term, it made that journey much easier, and it allowed me to actually be a voice and a mentor to other students that were trying to go through this process. So we appreciate your encouragement and your support.
Absolutely. I mean, once you know why you're doing what you're doing, then, all those late hours, all those grueling rewrites, then it becomes more than just that I have to do. That I need to do in order to realize who you're trying to become. So important.
I always thought of it as ends to a means rather than a means to the end.
Absolutely.
It's something I tell folks. It's nice to have in your back pocket. It's one of those things where I don't pull out that card that often, but should I need to, I have it. It unlocks some doors that may or may not have been unlocked previously.
Yeah, there's no substitution for credibility, right? And that's what that PhD gives you. It gives you credibility. At least a committee of people at some university somewhere said that you know what you're talking about. So that's credibility.
Yeah. Which is crazy. I know when I finished the doctoral journey, my daughter, I said, hey, I just submitted my dissertation, I'll be graduating soon. I said, but I have to go before some people and, talk to them and, kind of prove to them that I know what I'm doing. And she looked at me like, well, you got to prove what? Now you got to prove it to somebody, you didn't pay these people, she was so completely confused, by this end process. But yeah, you establish that credibility so that, people will then look to your work and your research and cite you and quote you and call upon you, in that area. So she just was completely like, for her, she was offended. Like, what? You have to prove yourself, But it is definitely an emotional journey. It is, and it's physically taxing, at the same time. So I'm glad I'm over that part. And I know that it never really ends. But, that part of, we call it academic phasing. I'm glad I'm over that part.
Definitely significant. Hey, I'm gonna jump off and open up the seat for whoever else wants to jump in. But like I said, I just want to get on and commend you guys. I was wasting time while I wait for dinner with my family, but I heard you guys saying such positive things. And I couldn't let the opportunity pass by because, there are three, I believe that there are three phases that everyone goes through, anything that you're doing. The first phase, especially in a career, the first phase is learning. You got to learn what you're going to do before you do it. Right. And at that point, you're really not generating much money for the company. You're not generating much money for yourself while you're learning, because that's kind of your reward. The second phase is that you're doing. Hopefully you can put into action that thing that you've learned. And if you're working for a company, that's usually when you're generating revenue for the company and you're generating income for yourself. But I think the last phase, and the phase that a lot of people are reluctant to get into, is there becomes a point where you need to share a point of view. And that's what you guys are doing. You're sharing your point of view, and I think the world becomes a better place when they've got people who have studied and they've gotten to the point where they're willing to share their point of view. So keep the faith and keep going.
Yeah.
All right, take care.
Thank you very much.
I was looking at one of the comments. Genuine Gracie was talking about it's hard to articulate the emotional journey to others. Yeah, how do you explain to somebody, pursuing a PhD? It's a lot. I think the brother that was just on, that committee is so important.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't think that anyone could really appreciate the experience that we have unless you actually walk the journey and completed the entire process. I call it a mental hazing. I don't care what nobody said. Those folks hazed me. And to my success, in a way, to my success, because it helped me build confidence and it helped me understand and appreciate the necessary steps that it takes to be an independent learner or a scholar or a lifelong learner, which is very important, and especially to my community. I live in New Orleans, Louisiana, and we are experiencing the lack of leadership on every level, from the government on down to the janitor, if that makes sense. And we need people to step up and speak to the people from different perspectives, not just standing in front of a podium and expounding on things that people want to hear, but also speaking from scientific methods or knowledge that can be presented to the masses, and so that people can understand is that they are dealing with in our current space or what have you. So that's so important. I'm going to have to keep moving. I'm going to do reflection because we're right on time. I appreciate Jason, Dr. I guess Calhoun, if I'm not mistaken, and the other guy who was with us. We just had a phenomenal experience here, But I want to say that according to research conducted by Anna Baptista, who had 25 doctoral committee chairs and 26 doctoral students in her 2010 doctorate that was entitled As an Emotional Journey, Navigating Through Perspective of PhD Students and Superintendents. She believed that committee chairs should motivate students, even at an emotional level. Doctoral students should demonstrate interrelated competencies that put the emphasis on his or her own responsibility when dealing with emotional aspects throughout the doctorate's experience. She believed they should be intrinsically motivated, should be able to demonstrate resilience and be able to manage unpredictable things. I mean, we can all think about those barriers that just come out of nowhere that create pressures and are obstacles. And committee chairs profiles should also integrate those competencies so that people can understand that and be able to appreciate it. I guess predict that ahead before the journey actually begins. So closing remarks, I mean, what do you all think about that? What do you all have to see and needing to be able to manage? Can't predict. I mean, when it comes to the emotional side of things, you have to be ready for it because it can drain you. It can really be a draining process.
I know for me, I think I had an expectation that my leadership and my committee members and, the academic staff at the university would be both the support emotionally as well as academically. And I think I leaned on the emotional part more so because I had transferred to Texas from Pennsylvania, 1,500 miles away. No family, no nothing, not even a job when I arrived here with my 2 minor children, and my oldest boy was still in college. And so I did rely heavily on that role. And I really had an expectation that was something that was a natural thing, for our advisors and our committee members and our chair to be able to have that skill to not only navigate us through this process, but, on an academic side, but on an emotional side. And we rely so heavily on our committee members, particularly for me. My chair was also my advisor. And so, yeah, there was I think I put just as much pressure on him to kind of give me a balance as much as he pressured me to make sure that I represented him well. So for me, it was a give and take. I want this from you, and I know what you want from me. I'm going to deliver, but I'm going to need you, to help me with this journey. And short of him babysitting for me, and taking care of those things, I really needed to be able to come to him and have these conversations when I was really struggling through this process. And there was, a handful of us that were, we call ourselves former teen moms, but we were carrying a load for our entire families. And we really, I really relied on my leadership for some of the emotional support.
Yeah, I would echo that. Certainly family, if they're close, helps. With that committee, like I said, I keep falling back to that. I was fortunate. I didn't have, like Ray, you said, you had to change your chair a couple of times. I got 3 off the bat that knew what I wanted to do and why. One of them happened to be a African American male, so I think that helped because I had identified him pretty early on. That we talked about the pathway and the struggles. I tell folks, like I said, it's not the coursework per se that I always find the challenge. It's that, all right, you're done with the coursework. Now you're by yourself for however long to develop all of this, all this that we end up having. And if you don't have those folks that can occasionally tell you about yourself, like, hey, get your stuff together, because you can go 2, 3 months, 4 months without doing anything, and I'll say they don't care. They're getting the money. University's getting their money. But it's what are you doing to get out? And for me, I had made myself an agreement with my chair that every Sunday at 1:00, it didn't matter how much I had written, a sentence or 10 pages, he was getting something. Mm-hmm. And I had it as an alarm on my computer, like 1:00, send something, and I did that, and he was okay with that. But you've got to have that conversation, those hard conversations with, hey, I know they're not babysitting per se, but if they're not vested in what you want to do, right. Where my chair was like, all right, what is it you're looking to do? What is it you're trying to achieve? He supported me for that. And like I said, you hear horror stories all the time about folks who it's overwhelming, and when they don't have that support, whether it's with the family or everything else that we know, the other, 18 hours of the day that you're not doing doc stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a lot, man.
Awesome. Yeah, it is, Doc. I must honestly say that it is very much so right on point. I can't take anything away from you. We greatly appreciate you spending time with us on this good Sunday evening. We're going to go ahead and close out with some tips. I'm going to read a few tips from Joyce Royce from the Stripper Report. The first tip is take a hard look at your work habits. Does working harder than anyone else around you really make you feel less like a fake? Or are you more likely to compensate for feeling unworthy? After you answer these questions, you may begin to see what makes you feel truly worthy in your own eyes. Second tip, learn to internalize external validation. When someone compliments you on a task you did really well, resist your habitual negative responses and just let that information sink in. Another way to practice this is to ask a trusted ally what your special gifts are. Listen carefully and metabolize that information or your friend's words. Turn like-minded people into allies. Clarify your own values and build connections with people who share those values. If you feel like the odd man out, perhaps because you're the youngest, you're a woman, or you have a different race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic background than your peers, don't give power to the assumption others may make about you. Work on owning who you are and what you believe in. Find people who see the real you. Don't suffer in silence. Rather than harboring secret fears, speak about your feelings with a trusted friend, a coach. Get you a mentor, a partner, or a therapist, or maybe even a significant other. Or express your real feelings in a journal or recorder. One of the symptoms of imposter syndrome is isolating from one's peers and suffering in silence.
Yes.
And the fifth one, look in an accurate mirror. How realistic is your way of seeing yourself and your abilities and accomplishments? Do a reality check by making a list of your specials and the qualities you have that attract people to you and have gotten you this far. So we appreciate you all for spending time with us. We are going to be closing out, and our next show is going to take place at the same time, same space, just a different date, April 24th, 2016 at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. And our topic will be gender differences. How do you define single? Our topic will be gender differences. How do you define single? So, Dr. Calhoun, we definitely want to hear from you, Rebel, and anyone else that's out there. Contact us.
Yeah. Where's Tamara?
Okay. Y'all take care now. We're gonna log out now. Y'all take care. Thank you all.
Thank you guys for joining us. Have a good evening.
Take it easy.